So in this video, we're going to be going through the Wanderer's best weapons, or Scaramouche as we've known him before. So yeah, we're going to see which are the best catalysts that are going to work on him and stuff like that. And yeah, let's begin. Alright, so first of all, we're going to see the weapons requirements. The Wanderer is going to be like kind of a normal DPS. He just scales with attack. He needs crit and stuff like that. So you're just going to have like the usual DPS weapons. Usually the one crit option is first. So crit rate and crit damage are going to be like the main priority. And then you want some attack. He scales pretty well with attack. And then you might want some elemental mastery and stuff like that for the swirls. And then finally you might want some energy recharge just to help him out with his burst. So yeah, it's just like the normal DPS requirements. Alright, so knowing that, let's start ranking the catalysts. So first of all, we have the magic guide. It's going to give you elemental mastery, and then it's going to increase your damage against opponents affected by Hydra or Electro. It's definitely not going to work, especially because of the low base attack. As I said before, he's just like a normal DPS, so base attack is going to matter a lot. And for that, the magic guide is going D tier. And to skip time, pretty much all of the 3-star weapons are not really going to be that good, mainly for the base attack. So yeah, Thrill and Tales is going D tier 2, Otherworldly Story is going D tier 2, Emerald Orb is going D tier 2, Twin Nephrites, maybe it's going C tier because it's going to give you at least like some crit rate, but yeah, it's still not going to be like a super good weapon, so it's going C tier. And finally, Ember Bed is going D tier 2. 3-star weapons are generally not going to be able to compete with like 4 or 5-star weapons, which is like logical in my opinion, but lately we've seen a lot of characters where 3-star weapons are going to work on them pretty well, but right now we're back to normal. This is not the case with the Wanderer. Now for the 4-star weapons, we have the Favonius Codex. It's going to give you energy recharge from the substat and also energy from the passive. It's definitely not going to be like super good, but it's definitely going to be at least better than the other 3-star weapons. So it's probably going like C tier. We've got the Witsit. It's going to give you crit damage as a substat, kind of an average base attack for a 4-star weapon, so it's kind of cool. And then the passive is the Witsit passive. It's going to give you like an effect depending on your luck. It's either an attack increase, your elemental damage is going to be increased, or some elemental mastery increase. The elemental mastery increase is not really going to be that good on the Wanderer, but the other 2 buffs are going to be pretty good. So it definitely depends on your luck, but it's still a good weapon for the crit damage substat. It's probably the best free-to-play weapon for the Wanderer, so I would put it at like A tier, probably lower A tier. We've got the Sacrificial Fragments. It's going to give you elemental mastery, and then it's going to reset your skill. It's probably not the weapon for Scaramouche. I mean, I can see it working on him in some scenarios, but generally speaking, it's not really like super good. I would put it at higher C tier or maybe lower B tier. So yeah, I'd put it at like higher C tier. We've got the Royal Grimoire. It's going to give you kind of a high base attack and also attack from the substat, which is kind of good. The passive's not really that good. It's going to work for the Wanderer because it's going to be doing like auto attacks, so you're going to have like many crit stacks and stuff like that. But generally speaking, the passive itself is not a good concept. So yeah, it's not like a super good weapon, but it's definitely still usable. So I would put it at like B tier. We have the Solar Pearl. An average base attack for a 4-star weapon. It's going to give you crit rate as a substat, which is pretty good. And then the passive is going to increase your elemental skill, bursts, and auto attacks damage. So if you're using your normal attacks, it's going to be a very good passive. It's not going to buff your charge attacks, but for the normal attacks, it's going to be pretty good. So yeah, it's definitely a good weapon for the Wanderer. I would put it at like A tier. We've got the Prototype Amber. It's just HP and then like some energy. So yeah, it's probably going D or C tier. Yeah, probably C tier. As I said before, the high base attack is going to matter a lot. So it's probably going to be better than the other like 3-star weapons, but it's still not a good weapon. We've got the Mappa Mare. So the Mappa Mare is going to have a 44 base attack, which is very high for a 4-star weapon. It's going to have an elemental mastery substat, which is not really that good. And then the passive is going to be able to increase your elemental damage bonus. You're probably going to be able to have the passive most of the time because you're going to be like triggering reactions. So this is not a problem. I would say generally it's a pretty decent weapon. So I would put it at like higher B tier. Now we've got the Blackcliff. It's going to have an average base attack and it's going to give you crit damage as a substat, which is very good. And then it's going to increase your attack after you defeat an enemy. Now if the passive active, it's going to be a very, very good weapon. It's going to give you a lot of attack and also crit damage. So that's pretty good. But the problem is the passive from the Blackcliff, it might be hard to activate sometimes. When you're facing like only one big enemy and stuff like that, it's basically without a passive. So yeah, it depends on like the situation, but generally it's still a decent weapon even without the passive. So I would put it at like lower A tier. We've got the Eye of Perception, kind of a low base attack for a 4-star weapon. It's going to give you attack from the substat, so it kind of makes up for that. And then the passive is basically just some extra damage, which is not really that good. I would put it at like lower B tier. Now we've got the Wine and Song. It's going to have a high base attack for a 4-star weapon. Energy recharge as a substat stat, which is not really that good. And then the passive is basically gonna decrease the stamina consumption when you sprint. And when you sprint, it's gonna increase your attack, which is kind of good. To be honest, I'm not really sure if it's gonna work with the Wanderer's stamina. I mean, it says like sprint or alternate sprint, so in theory it might work, but I'm not really sure. Either way, it's not really like a super good weapon. It's just gonna increase your attack and then give you some energy recharge. Maybe increase your stamina a little bit if it works, but I'm not really sure about that. It's probably not gonna work. You're not even gonna be like sprinting with the Wanderer anyways, like a lot. So yeah, I'll put it at like lower B tier. We've got the Frostbearer, average base attack, and then attack substat. And then the passive is basically some extra damage too. I would probably put it at like lower B tier too. We've got the Dodoco Tails, kind of a low base attack, but it's gonna make up for it with an attack substat. But the passive is pretty good. It's gonna buff your normal attacks damage and also your charge attacks damage. So yeah, it's gonna be a very good weapon, especially if you refined it. I would probably put it at like A tier. If you had the Dodoco Tails, it's definitely a very good free to play weapon for the Wanderer. We've got the Hakushin Ring. It's gonna give you energy recharge, and the passive is basically just like a support passive. It's definitely not a very good like DPS weapon, so we'd put it at like C tier. Oathsworn Eye, a high base attack, and it's also gonna give you attack as a substat. The passive is just gonna give you energy recharge, which is not really super good. I would put it at like B tier too, just for the attack. We've got the Wandering Even Star. It's gonna give you elemental mastery, and then the passive is also like, it's gonna buff your elemental mastery. It's also gonna buff your teammates, but the thing is, you're not gonna build that much elemental mastery in the Wanderer, so it's not really gonna work. I would put it at like C or D tier, probably C tier. For fulfillments, it's not gonna work at all. In fact, it's gonna make you lose attack, which is definitely not good. So yeah, it's going C or D tier, but for the attack class, I would put it at like D tier. Alright, so now for the 5-star weapons. Now, as I said, guys, it's just like a normal basic DPS. So the 5 stars are like generally gonna be much better than the rest of the weapons. Just for the high base attack, they're just basically gonna be like stat sticks. So yeah, I have the Skyward Atlas, is super high base attack, and then it's also gonna give you attack from the substat, and then it's also gonna increase your elemental damage bonus. And also it's gonna give you some extra damage from the passive. So yeah, it's definitely a stacked weapon. It's definitely going S tier. You should just get like enough crit from the substats and the circlet and stuff like that. And with the high base attack from the Skyward, you're gonna have a very good Scaramouche. We have the Lost Prayer. You're gonna have less base attack than the Skyward, but it's still pretty decent base attack. Not only decent, it's very good. It's gonna give you crit rate from the substat, which is very, very good. And then the passive is gonna increase your movement speed, which is not really that important, but mainly it's gonna give you elemental damage bonus, which you're gonna need when playing the Wanderer. You're probably gonna be playing them on field anyways, so we're gonna have the full passive. So yeah, it's a very good weapon too. It's definitely going S tier. We have the Memory of Dust, a pretty decent base attack too. Attack as a substat, which is pretty good. And then it's gonna increase your shield strength, and it's also gonna buff your attack. So it's basically just like an attack stat stick. I wouldn't say it's S tier material, to be honest. It's just like attack, but it's definitely a very good weapon. So I would put it at like higher A tier, probably the best one at A tier. We've got the Everlasting Moonglow. No, it's not gonna work. It's probably going like C tier, maybe higher C tier for the base attack, and that's it. It's actually gonna increase your normal attack damage too from your HP, but yeah, it's still not a good weapon, so it's going like higher C tier. We've got the Kagura's Verity, a decent base attack, and it's also gonna give you crit damage as a substat, which is super good. And that's the thing with like 5-star weapons, like the Kagura's Verity, a decent base attack, crit damage, that's already better than most weapons. Without even like looking at the passive or anything like that, it's probably A tier right now without the passive. But yeah, the passive is basically just gonna buff your elemental skill, and then if you have the 3 stacks, it's gonna increase your elemental damage bonus. You're gonna be able to have the 3 stacks too most of the time. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be a very good weapon. I would put it at like lower S tier, maybe between the Skyward and the Lost Prayer. We've got the 1000 Floating Dreams, kind of a low base attack, and it's gonna give you elemental mastery as a substat, which is not really super good. And then the passive is basically gonna buff your attack and elemental mastery, and it's also gonna buff your teammates elemental mastery. Generally I would say you're probably gonna be playing the Wanderer with like other elements. You're probably not gonna be playing them with like only an emo, so you're gonna have at least like 2 characters that are gonna give you elemental damage bonus, which makes this weapon pretty decent. It's definitely not S tier, probably not A tier too, you know, no crit and stuff like that. It's just basically like damage bonus and a decent base attack, so I would put it at like B tier, maybe higher B tier. And finally, we've got his signature weapon, the Tulaitula's Remembrance. It's gonna give you a super high base attack, the same as the Skyward, the highest base attack on the Catalyst, and then it's gonna give you crit damage as a substat, which is very, very good. It's not a big substat, but it's definitely still pretty good. And then the passive is basically just gonna increase your normal attacks damage. I'm not gonna go through the passive in details right now. I might do a specific video for this weapon, so stay tuned, subscribe to the channel. But for right now, it's basically just going to increase your normal attack speed, and it's going to increase your normal attack's damage. Combine that with a very high base attack and a crit damage substat, it's definitely an S tier weapon. It's probably the best too. Yeah, I'll put it at like the best at S tier. So yeah, this is the tier list for the Wanderer's weapons. As I said before, it looks the same as like pretty much any DPS catalyst weapons, like Lee for example, or whatever. Maybe not Ningguang, but generally any DPS catalyst user is probably going to be the same as this tier list. I would say it's generally like normal on free-to-play friendliness. It's not like super free-to-play friendly, but the game has been out for so long right now. I think everyone's going to have like a decent catalyst, at least a decent DPS catalyst. Even if you don't have any 5 stars, you probably have the Widset for example, or something like that. So yeah, you can probably manage. But yeah, that was the video guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you want to say anything, leave it in the comments, and see y'all in the next video. Peace.